I'm going to be talking a bit today about Kerry Green in the Pavilion and the situation regarding the ongoing redevelopment plans by this town's mayor. I'm not as fluent a speaker as Julian and Tony, so I've got a trusty PowerPoint presentation here. So first of all, a little bit about the history of Kerry Green. Kerry Green came into existence in the 1840s, so we've had it for a long, long time. I think a fountain was put in the 1880s. It's had a long, varied history, but the main point is it has always been a public space for the people. You can see here, so I mean, you can see in the picture here, this was in 1958. The fountain obviously isn't there, but you've got the walkway, it's tree lined, you've got benches, the lovely flower beds, it's absolutely beautiful. Obviously today it looks rather different from that, and we've obviously got the fountain, it's home to the bust of Agatha Christie, and it still remains a well-used green area today, despite what the council wants to lead everybody to believe. So bearing in mind how well used it is, the majority of the public are obviously very against the idea of handing it over to a private developer, Nicholas James Group, and allowing them to build this beautiful 14-storey thing here. It looks lovely, doesn't it? So this picture gives you an idea of what they actually want to do to our harbour side. We've got our beautiful little pavilion here, and here is the 14-storey thing that's going to be overshadowing absolutely everything, and just casting a horrible shadow over the entire seafront. I believe that there would be a walkway, some sort of bridge going from the pavilion to this tower block here, and underneath that bridge would be a car park. So the pavilion would essentially be a hotel lobby, and I think most of the public think that it is worth more than that, and it should be more than just a lobby. You can't see, obviously, from this angle, but behind the pavilion you have Kerry Green. Nicholas James Group are saying that Kerry Green will be no more. They want to rip out Kerry Green, and they want to stick a private car park on it. It would be for the sole use of hotel residents and also the very rich elite who could afford to buy apartments in this building here. Just to show you how strong the public feeling is against this, I've got some figures here. So the Save Kerry Green Facebook page has got over 5,000 members. The Torquay Pavilion Trust, who I will come to later, they have come up with an alternative proposal to the hotel. That's got over 1,000 members, and the Change.org petition received 3,270 signatures. Now, the Change.org petition was rejected by our local council.
Not by me.
No, I know, not by you. By our lovely mayor and all his supporters.
Just say his name, just so we don't forget.
I don't want to say his name. Basically, I think the way that the public have been treated regarding the pavilion and Kerry Green issue quite neatly sums up everything that is wrong with Torbay Council at the moment. Firstly, it is really quite undemocratic at the moment. The Kerry Green Pavilion redevelopment, this is a mayoral vision. This is Gordon Oliver's, I've said his name, mayoral vision. So basically, as long as Gordon Oliver remains in charge, he is going to continue, he is going to plough ahead with this mayoral vision because it is his baby, and he has shown that he doesn't give a monkey's what we the public think, or even what his councillors, what his council chambers think. He has just chosen to go ahead and just ignore everybody because he knows best. Important council meetings have been arranged at times when key opposers to the scheme have been unable to attend. For example, our mayoral candidate, Julian Parrott, requested a call-in over the Mayor's decision not to grant a covenant on Carey Green. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the Overview and Scrutiny Board, these meetings are usually held at 5 p.m. Yeah. This one was held at 10:30 in the morning, that's it. So in the middle of the working day, when many of the opposers to this scheme were obviously unable to get the time off from work, so couldn't attend. This left Julian's side, our side, who are against the pavilion, this left our side quite diminished really, didn't it? And when it comes, when the council vote results in a tie, the chairman receives the casting vote. So the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Board is a Conservative and quite a good friend of Gordon Oliver, I believe. So unsurprisingly, the chairman cast the vote in favour of Gordon Oliver, and that was the end of the matter. Public meetings have been arranged at times when the majority of the public have been unable to attend. For example, again, in the middle of the working day, so you don't get, the public isn't receiving the access to these meetings that they need to receive in order to be informed. And worst of all, you've got public meetings being rearranged at the last minute. So people arrange their day so that they can attend this meeting, and at the absolute last minute they're being told that actually it's being held 2 hours earlier. So they're either unable to attend, or worse still, they turn up at the time they thought it was to find that it's all been discussed and the matter's done and dusted. I attended a public meeting and they changed the time for it. So I had arranged, I have a young child, he's 2 years old. So I had arranged to get childcare so that I could go to this meeting, and they rearranged it. And I thought, oh my goodness, you know, what do I do? Shall I just not go? Because I'm obviously I'm gonna have to bring a child in tow with me. And then I thought, no, stuff it. I'm gonna bring my child. And I'm sure a lot of the councillors were not too happy because he was an absolute nightmare and he ran riot.
This is only because you changed the time.
Well, yeah, I'm sure I got a few evil looks from Gordon Oliver, but I thought... So yeah. And another issue, I think, which doesn't... I think these community partnerships and neighbourhood plan meetings, I don't know if any of you have heard of them. No, which proves my point. Not many people have heard of these things. So these community partnerships and neighbourhood plans are touted as being incredibly democratic, and they allow the community to get involved. Not much of the community knows that they're going on, clearly. So what you end up getting is a few people who actually have vested interests in what is going on in the particular area, turning up to these meetings to push their own agendas. And one example of this is the Torbay, the Torquay Town Centre Community Partnership. This is the partnership that is in charge of the area that the Pavilion and the Harborside development, Carey Green, is on. Up until recently, the vice chair of this community partnership was a gentleman who also happens to be an architect at Kay Elliott, who was in charge of designing that beautiful building that we saw just a minute ago. So yeah, these, I think a lot of, I think around the Bay, I'm not going to use this term myself, but many people have described these community partnerships and neighbourhood plans as local prangos, and you can't blame them, you can see why.
But there is hope out there, just where there is hope, because the neighbourhood plan includes the fact that we're going to protect green spaces, including Carey Green, but of course, much to their consternation, the Mayor's going to tear that up. So in fact, it just demonstrates that neighbourhood plans are pretty much worthless anyway. So there's hope out there, hurrah! One of the things that I thought was extraordinary was that at the very start of the whole process, I said, yeah, but do you understand that there's things like the Infrastructure Commission and various other things that can actually ride roughshod over your neighbourhood plans anyway. It doesn't matter what you put in, how democratically they're produced. Actually, the local authority, the government, the association can all actually say, well, I'm sorry, you know, it's very nice and a good ambition, but actually we're going to not going to take the next step.
Yeah, yeah. It's just cosmetics.
I think maybe with the right mayor, these things might work. Maybe. So I think the second problem that we are seeing a lot with this council at the moment is the lack of transparency. So a big example of this is the council is due to grant a 250-year lease to, you're laughing already, to the new developers of Kerry Green and the Pavilion. Councillors are expected to vote on this lease. However, the mayor is refusing to let councillors see the lease. Why? What is he trying to hide? And also, how can councillors be expected to vote on a lease which they aren't even allowed to read? Another example is that the mayor and his supporters are leading everyone to believe that the redevelopment of the pavilion into a hotel and that awful tower block and turning Kerry Green into a car park, he is allowing everyone to believe that that is the only option, and this is not the case. I mean, specifically in terms of the Kerry Green car park, there is somebody who is working within the Torquay Pavilion Trust, who is an architect. His name is Mervyn Seal, and he has proved that there would be ample space for 2 levels of underground parking underneath the 14-storey hotel. The developers have actually admitted that even if Kerry Green goes ahead, or even if the pavilion goes ahead, even with Kerry Green being a car park, they would still have to use valet parking anyway. Well, what I would say is, if they have to use valet parking anyway, why not go the whole hog and just make the lot valet parking and just leave our lovely green as it is? The Torquay Pavilion Trust community proposal. So they have actually come up with an alternative to Nicholas James Group's hotel, which I'm going to come to in a minute. But just to show you, this is them here. I don't know how well you can see this picture, but this is Paul, who is in charge of Save Kerry Green, Lulu, who is very heavily involved in Save Kerry Green, and this is John T, who is who came up with the alternative proposal, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And then the third and final one, which I think is the most important problem in a way, is Torbay Council always likes to choose the easy option, and it is simply easy for Torbay Council to hand the pavilion over to private developers and just wash their hands of the matter, let them do what they want with it. But what I would say is, choosing the easy option is not always the best option, and you have to think about what is best for Torbay and what is best for the residents of Torbay. You know, is it best that we hand the pavilion over, and Kerry Green, over to some rich developer who would take the majority of the profits of this venture and take them to Dorset, where they're based? Would it not be better if we could keep the profits in Torquay for the Bay? Is it best for the residents of Torbay that the sort of jobs that will be created by this scheme are going to be low paid, you know, minimum wage quite probably, part-time contract jobs that aren't really going to make a significant difference to anyone, and that are actually quite possibly going to end up costing the taxpayer, because these people with these low paid jobs quite often can't afford to survive on them. So end up having to, as Julian said, rely on on tax credits, on housing benefits, and all the rest just to survive. Or could we do better? And I think the answer is yes, we could do better. And one example of us being able to do better is Torquay Pavilion Trust community proposal. It requires you to look at the pavilion in a completely different light. So at the moment, everyone in Torbay seems to look at the pavilion as if it's a burden that we need to rid ourselves of. But I think if you look at the pavilion in the light that it is a beautiful thing, and it has been allowed to deteriorate, and it has been run into the ground some would say with the sole purpose of selling it on and turning it into a hotel.
Yes.
What we want to do, what the Torbay Pavilion Trust wants to do, is not to redevelop it into something alien from what it was, not to turn it into some faceless modern hotel, but to actually regenerate it and bring it back to its former glory. And a lot of people say, well, how would you do this? Where are you going to get the money from? And the simple answer is that it would not be, you wouldn't be focusing, it's not a private company taking it on. So there is a much less aggressive focus on profits. We would have no shareholders to please. We would be a community interest company running the pavilion solely for the community and the people who are meant to use it. It would be a collaboration between a community interest company, which would be members of the community. I assume that Torquay Pavilion Trust would look after it, the local council and also the government. And the brilliant thing is once it is considered a community project, it becomes eligible for all sorts of grants from local government and well, from central government. It would be eligible for central government funding, but not just that, it would also be considered a charitable organisation. So it would be eligible for tax relief and also business rates, which we would then be able to pass on to the people who are putting their shops in the pavilion. You would end up with cheaper rates for small business owners who are just starting out and want to, get their foot in the door and make a start. So you would actually see the profit from this being pumped back into Torquay, into the bay, rather than going out to Dorset or wherever else the Nicholas James Group decides it's gonna send it. But the most important thing is that it keeps Kerry Green free and accessible to the public. Just a little bit about why I think we need UKIP for this. The pavilion in Kerry Green is a mayoral vision. It's Gordon Oliver's vision. And as I said, as long as Gordon Oliver is in power, this is going to happen. Our mayoral candidate, Julian Parrott, opposes Kerry Green and he is open to alternative proposals for the pavilion. Julian is the only credible mayoral candidate who has been against the plans from the start. Our friend Darren Cow likes to lead everyone to believe that he's been against the plans from the start, but actually, if you track back, he was in favour of them to start with. And it is only when he realised the strength of public opposition that he suddenly started backpedaling and said, oh no, I'm going to stand up for the people. Do we want a mayor like that? Do we trust a mayor like that? I'm sure I would say that to save Kerry Green and the pavilion around here, I think the only answer is to vote UKIP. And then just a little picture here. It's my final thought. Here is a picture of Kerry Green taken 2 weeks ago. The council love to ram it down everyone's throats how underused it is. So you can see it's completely empty. No one uses this space. So yeah.